On this episode, I sit down with Chris Hagerman, who is newer to real estate, but has taken it by storm. Today, he shares his secrets for generating online leads and maximizing his search engine optimization. We also dig into his personal philosophy towards sales, following up with realtors and clients, and why online reviews have been his number one focus for the past 3 years. Before we get started, let's help you stay connected with amazing content like this by hitting that subscribe button now. And without further ado, I'm your host, Shawn Kunkler. And we're live. What's happening, brother?
Hey, Shawn, how's it going?
I'm good. Thanks for hopping on with me. I appreciate it. I know you're super busy.
It's always time to hop on and chat, especially, potentially to other fellow realtors and see how we can help them out.
And that's funny. That's actually how we met. So I have, to give everybody some context, I have a really dear friend of mine who works at Meta, Facebook. And he was like, hey, I found this property. It's a few counties over. I'm in San Francisco. It was in
Georgetown.
That's right.
Georgetown. Yep. Georgetown.
My buddy was like, hey, do you have a good realtor that I can talk to? I want to check out the disclosures and see if this property's worth it. And so I went to Google, the number one search engine in the US, Googled a handful of agents. I Googled probably a dozen, vetted them. I didn't love all of them. I liked 6, and I picked up the phone. And by this time it was probably 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. And I called 6 agents. And one was like, hey, sorry, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you in 15 minutes? The other 5 didn't respond at all. Floored, right? And we're, in a slower economy, you would think people would be chasing business. The next day, Monday morning rolls around, 2 call me, and it was about noon. And so not every agent called me, and then 2 called me at noon. One dude called me, literally said, I'll call you in 15 minutes, called me in 10. It was you. And I was like, wow, like 1, this dude's obviously going for it. And then 2, you were super savvy. Like, I think as a realtor to realtor, we can sniff each other out of who's an actual producer and who's pretending.
Yeah.
And you were on it. I gave your name to my buddy who has experience. He's bought property before. He's super savvy. And he pinged me as soon as he got off the phone with you. He's like, Chris is awesome. He's solid. He knows his stuff. And so that's how we met. And then I was like, hey, dude, let's hop on this podcast and chop it up, because what you're doing is effective and it's working and it's unique in your market, and it shouldn't be.
You pretty much hit that right on the hammer. It's, for one, the market is, slowing down for a lot of people. To not be answering your phone calls to me is crazy. I know it's Sunday. People like to watch football, have fun, whatnot. But those are the days that or at least for me, I feel like I have to show up extra. So, just answering those phone calls and, obviously being tech savvy, that helps a lot with the market right now, and just connecting with people right away. So, no, I was happy we were able to make that connection right away, Shawn, and I can tell right away after speaking with your buddy that it was going to be a perfect fit.
Yeah, he's a super cool dude. He's seriously one of my closest friends. So more importantly, I had to find an agent who I trusted, because he would immediately call me and be like, dude, like, why did you send me to this person?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And to your point, like, it's Sunday. I get it. We have personal lives, but come on, if you're a realtor, you have your phone in your pocket. You can just text somebody and say, hey, so sorry, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you tomorrow? Can I call you at 9 a.m. tomorrow? Or just be specific and let them know what's happening. It was fascinating to me to be on the consumer side in that capacity and be treated like that. And all my messages were like, hey, I'm Shawn Kunkler. I'm from San Francisco. I have a referral for you. Can you give me a call?
That's gold right there. And honestly, that's the biggest thing. Once I hear a referral, especially if you know somebody, then that's something that you as a realtor are putting your trust into somebody else, and for you to vet those people. And you're putting your time out there as well as yourself out there by potentially connecting with somebody. So you are totally correct, and I'm happy that we were connecting in that sense that when you are referring out your client, you pretty much know if they know and like you and trust you, that you want to try and find somebody that's somewhat similar to you in how they conduct their business. Because if they liked how you're doing it, then they should potentially like how the person you're referring is doing business as well.
For sure. And, I want to just clarify as well. There's a difference, which you have. There's a difference between being on top of it and being tenacious and being pushy and salesy. And you didn't cross the line, not in the least. You were just on top of it. You're like, right away, hey, I'm in the middle of something. I'll call you in X minutes. And you did. Like, you actually kept that first promise, which I think that's a very small distinction that also people miss, is if you say, I'm going to do something in 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes tomorrow, do it. Unfortunately,
people's word and timelines and stuff like that has kind of gone wayside. Maybe it's my generation, maybe it's somewhere mixed in between communication. But yeah, I agree. Saying you're going to do something and doing it on time and just showing that you're going to go through with that initial plan just kind of solidifies and sets you up for success, just anything future wise with that client or anybody in that instance.
I agree. Do you have sales background prior to getting into real estate?
I started off pouring concrete. My stepdad owned a concrete company out in Roseville, California. So I learned from an early age how to pour concrete. I learned the basics of pouring frames for houses. I learned the hard work aspect of it. I would shovel, honestly, probably for 8 hours a day. I would shovel rock from one hole to another hole, sweep it up. And that kind of taught me that I did not want to be out in the 110-degree weather. So I took that hard work aspects, learned, all the different things from pouring concrete, framing, whatnot, transitioned into restaurant industry, which a lot of us do. From there, I was actually in the restaurant industry for about 15 years. So I went from everywhere from start off at Jamba Juice. I've actually danced in a coffee suit before. So when I was 16, I was one of those guys on the corner dancing in a coffee suit.
I hope you have video of that.
My buddy has one photo of it. I didn't want people knowing. And the worst thing was I was dancing down the street from my high school, so I would know the people walking by me, but I wouldn't let them know it was me. But we do things to make money. So all this stuff kind of circled into the hard work, doing things that you have to do. The restaurant industry, I was in there for 15 years. I was at Olive Garden. Then I went to a fine dining restaurant. Mm-hmm. Long story short, it kind of helped shape me to where I can communicate with so many different types of people. It's funny because I kind of approach each client and I approached people similar to almost like serving a table. If it's kind of different, obviously, because no matter what, you're still going to be guiding somebody along. You're giving somebody information that they wouldn't know already. But the same thing kind of goes with the table, like when you're serving. If you have people that watch this, a lot of real estate agents used to be in the restaurants. You never know what to expect, and each situation's always different. So that's one thing that I like to, the transition from restaurant to real estate was pretty seamless in terms of communication. But I was able to, during the time of me working restaurants, I did go to Sac State University. So I was able to get my degrees in marketing, real estate, whatnot. And that all just, funny enough, circled back into this huge circle of me getting into real estate. And so now I'm able to communicate with people. I can figure out what their needs are and what their wants are, I think, sooner than most people can. I can pretty much just read people, just based on communicating and talking to so many different people throughout the years. But yeah, it kind of went from construction to restaurant, went to school. Funny enough, I didn't want to get into real estate because I didn't want to be considered a salesman. I did not want to be that kind of person. I always thought the pushy. I've been to a few open houses when I was looking for houses, and I just hated it. I hated how some people would conduct themselves and how pushy people were, or people would just send you listings that weren't even anything you were looking at, which deterred me for a long time. And one of my good friends saw what I was doing and just kind of kept bugging me and said, Chris, you got to get into real estate. You're looking at the sales part of it, and you don't have to be that person. So funny enough, that's kind of goes back to what you were saying, Shawn, is what I do, and I don't consider myself a salesperson. what I consider myself as somebody that has resources and I know what I'm doing. So if I were to offer, help to somebody, it's up to them, obviously, if they want that help or not. I'm not here to bug you. I'm not here to chase anybody. But just like you, and we have set skills. We each have things that we know we can do, and we're confident. And we don't have to be salesy with things that we know and are confident with. At least for me, that's how I feel.
I totally appreciate that. I am so bummed that sales, especially in the US, just has such a tainted name.
Yeah.
Those high pressure tactics, the selling with urgency, and then just smathering people with things they don't want and need is unfortunately what across the board, it just gives us a really bad reputation. And I've been in sales for 2 decades, and I would say that's probably the one thing that bums me out the most is just that whole philosophy, or the way that we're viewed in this industry.
The stigma that comes with it.
It totally is. But the reality is we do sell. And I think there is an elegance to, and I've said this before, is people love to buy, but they hate to be sold. And then how do we approach it differently from a relationship where we're actually keeping the fiduciary relationship in mind and helping him through this process and not just chasing our paycheck. And that's the art I have instilled, and we continue to with our team, is that we lead with relationship. The relationship is more important than any one transaction, because anybody listening, our business, just like you and I are talking now, it's built on referrals. It's either agent to agent referrals, or it's if it's a client that we helped who's recommending their mom to us.
Yeah, those are the best. Those ones are the special ones. When you have a family member, I just had that recently. A family member was relocating, and they gave me the shout out and gave me the vote of confidence, and that just gives you the pat on the back to know you're doing all the right things.
100%, man. And that's, interestingly enough, that's how I first discovered you, is through Google. You had 25, if I remember correctly, 25 reviews. And most agents don't have a lot of reviews on Google, which that's, if again, that's one of the number. We don't even say go search this thing. We say go Google it. Like, that's how prolific this thing is in our lives. And so if you're asking for reviews, make sure they're put onto Google, because that is clearly an important platform. But that's how I found you. And I read a couple of the reviews and then picked a handful of other agents. And that's how I ultimately tried to hone in on who was the better one. And of course, I used other tools and layered it in, but that's where I started as a realtor.
Yeah. And that's, Google is one of the best sources. As you said, people don't, they don't go online and say, hey, look up something. It's Google. That's just what it is. And if you're not using Google in your advantage, then unfortunately you're going to be missing out on all those people that are searching in Google.
Yeah.
Obviously they can find you on Yelp, all your other social media platforms, but they'll have to type that in specifically compared to, say, for instance, looking at a realtor in a certain area. What I traditionally do is I have an email. I just create an email with all of my different platforms in it, or where I would like for them to have reviews set up. Yelp, Google. I actually have them leave reviews on my brokerage page as well, because when people look at your broker, they're going to look at those reviews, and if your name's in there, they're going to, potentially look at you if they don't want to have to go through the broker himself or herself. But Google itself, I create emails, and at the end of the transaction, I give them a couple of days, let them get settled in. I send over an email that says, can I ask for a favor? And it has all the different review links in there. I let them know, just if you want to create something, you can copy and link it to all these different review platforms, different links. They're able to do it within 5 to 10 minutes. And within a day, or 1 day, you can get reviews on all different platforms. So Google obviously is the one that I put first, because that's the one that we need, and that's the one that people see when they're getting calls. And the more reviews you have, the more chance you have of popping up in those search criteria too.
Dude, did you hack my email? my my email that I literally send my subject line is small favor.
Yeah.
And then I have like just a really brief body copy of what I'm trying to convey to my client. And then I literally hyperlink it to the pages. So my goal is, again, lead with relationship. How do you make this as easy as possible for the other person? Whatever
Exactly.
step we're in the middle of. To your point, it works like gold. And I hope somebody gleans that. Like that's one super easy thing. I would say the one difference you and I do is, and test this and see what works for you. And I also would say test it and see what works in your market, because demographics are very different and people respond very differently in different places. But I found in our market in San Francisco, if I send it a week before we close, they're in the groove of, they're not overwhelmed with the move yet. And I noticed that I get a slightly better response. Not response in responding to the email, but them actually complying and writing a review than if I do it afterwards.
I haven't tried that theory out yet. I think that would make sense, just because at that point they're not moving stuff and they're not moving in, trying to get their house settled in, whatnot. No, I think, you know what? I think I'll have to try that out this year. I'll do half a week before, and I'll do the half a week after. We'll see what works better.
Yeah. And get back to me. I'm actually really curious of the results. The one thing that I would recommend adding is I say, I'm sending this to you now while all the different aspects of the transaction are fresh in your mind.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. I know traditionally what I'll do is the first intro sentence, I'll mention, hey, you know, if you're having trouble thinking of something to say, just mention some, during the transaction, the appraisal didn't come in at value. Think of something that happened that I was able to help you with overcome. Or if you just like the communication, sometimes it's nice to give them an idea of what to talk about, because you and we already know what we hope for in real estate reviews. But for the general consumer, they're going to most likely have to Google and say, what are normal people reviewing real estate agents for?
Right. Yeah. Again, make it as easy as possible for them. The other thing that I really like that you do, and I did as well, and I find that most people don't, and I'll share how I know this, is on Google, you can own the page as a business, which I would highly recommend, but you also added your phone number. And I cannot tell you how many times I've searched, I've looked up an agent, found them on Google, their business page pops up on the right, but then I can't find their phone number. And now I'm doing another search 3 or 4 clicks later. And if I'm a consumer, I'm not doing 3 or 4 clicks. I'm doing 1 to 2 clicks. And if I can't find what I want, I go to the next person. So that would be my huge tip to somebody out there, is make sure you add it. And the easiest way to add it, I don't know if you do this hack, but it has your primary business address, and they sometimes have a secondary. On the secondary, put the phone number there. Just write it in. If there's no room to put it in, like if it doesn't specifically say work phone number or something to that effect, just create a category for it.
If you don't have a Google My Business at this point, that would be the first thing I would do for 2023. And also, if you have issues, or if you don't like to post, there's a really cool program. You do have to pay for it. It's called HomeSnap. They do post on your behalf, just to keep your SEO and to keep the Google profile pretty active. That way there's more oomph when people search for you. But the cool thing about that is it also compiles all your reviews. So you can actually send them a HomeSnap link if you wanted to do that, and it feeds right into Google. Just different ways you can do it. But Google, My Business is huge. And interesting enough, I'm going to start using, I think we spoke about this on the phone, is I'm going to start using I'm a local guide for Google as well. So I'm ranked within the top 10% of reviewers. So anywhere I go, it reminds me, to post a picture, describe how it was, describe the coffee, the neighborhood, whatever that situation may be. And this year, I'm actually going to start using the local service. I'm going to start using that to my advantage and try to chime that in and kind of mix that in with my business profile. Obviously subtly. I'm not going to be doing anything too crazy, but I think that will be something huge this year that's going to help, obviously just make you the local the local realtor for the area and show that you have the local knowledge.
I agree. There's a realtor out of Miami, Amit Buta, who he was on the podcast as well. And his, similar to what we just talked about, is he'll write reviews without being salesy, but he'll covertly remind people of who he is and what he does. Just, it's kind of like, and he described it as, which I thought was a perfect way to describe it. It's like product placement in a movie. It's just a subtle thing in the background that you notice subconsciously, but there's no overt, like somebody holding up a can of soda and being like, have you had your Pepsi today?
Yeah. There's no call to action. There's no CTA at the end saying, hey, if you're looking to buy or sell in the area. It's more like you're saying, which is kind of why we have Facebook and why we do all these other things anyways, is to just stay top of mind. So when somebody is looking to buy, sell, or invest, they think, hey, I saw Shawn's post the other day, or I saw him with, Chris on Realtor 180, and obviously they're doing pretty well if they're potentially helping other people. So, that's the best thing about social media. And interesting enough, a question for you: if you were not a real estate agent, would you be using social media?
What would I be doing for work?
That's true. Yeah.
It depends on what my role was and what I was doing. But I think if I was an entrepreneur, which it's kind of in my DNA, yeah, I would for sure. I ran many years ago, I ran a martial arts school, and I would write articles for magazines to get published. That was pre-social media. So yeah, I would 100%, I would be looking for avenues to get my name out there in some capacity. And yeah, and like in just talking through and thinking about it, I would definitely look at social media, but I would look at other avenues similar to what I did when I was a martial artist. I wrote a book about martial arts and training to use that as a marketing piece. When I got into real estate, I wrote The Insider's Guide to Home Buying, the San Francisco edition. I always try to look at what is everybody else doing and then what can I do a little bit differently.
Yeah.
But I think social media, it's free 99% of the time. So why would you not do it? I think the mistake though, and you can chime in on this, is I think most people, we fall into the shiny object syndrome. And then we try to build our LinkedIn, our YouTube, our TikTok, our, every little widget here and there. And we spread ourselves too thin. And then we go, well, nothing's working.
Yeah. No, it's true. And that's one thing that if you are using social media, you kind of have to find out which platform are you getting the most engagement with. Because, a LinkedIn post isn't going to go the same as a Twitter post compared to an Instagram reel. So, I totally agree with you on that. And that's a fault that I make myself sometimes, because you do want to try to appeal to everybody. And the sooner you realize you're not going to be able to appeal to everybody on all these different platforms, you can start to focus in on what you're looking for and the people and the clients that you do actually want to attract. Similar to you writing that book for, buyers in San Francisco. It's nice. And if you're in San Francisco, you're looking for that. If you're in LA, it's kind of like, well, that's not really too relevant for me, but you still know at least that Shawn knows the process of buying in San Francisco if you were to go out there.
That's marketing, is know your niche and know exactly what the target you're trying to reach. And like, not for nothing, but if I have a buyer, the conversation I'm going to have with the buyer about the market is going to be vastly different than I'm going to have the conversation with the seller interested in the market, because they both have very different needs. One's trying to optimize, the buyer is trying to optimize how little they spend, and then the seller is trying to optimize how much they're getting for their house. And so if I see this with newsletters, is you get a generic newsletter from a realtor and they're trying to hit both of those targets and they're trying to market to the realtor.
Great time to buy and sell right now. You're thinking, how is that possible?
Exactly. Oh, and if you have a referral, just give me a call. And you're like, oh my goodness, that's
which one do you want? Yeah.
Like, you clearly haven't segmented your list.
Yeah, no, very true.
If you reflect on your past years in the business, what's your marketing piece that you're like, this is it? This is this is my strong suit. And it could be asking for reviews. Like that's a strategy also.
My first full-time year was when when COVID was, we had lockdowns and everything. At that point, I had no database. I had one transaction the year before. I pretty much had to learn everything from marketing. I had no database at that point, as I mentioned. So for me, everything I was doing was geared towards online. I've never done door knocking. I've made one cold call in my life. Crazy enough, I know. And I turned that one around actually, and that person and I are still kind of friends now. Funny enough, because she was like, "Why are you calling me? I'm on the do not call list." And I'm like, "Hey, I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna look into this for you." I ended up getting her off the do not call list, but that was kind of my, okay, Chris, maybe cold calling isn't your forte. So never door knocked, never done cold calling, which I know a lot of people, that's kind of what they do. I just focus really on online, on my Google reviews. I make sure that I keep everything up to date. I put blogs on my website. Obviously, we never know how the SEO is going to work, and that's more of something that happens over time. This year, I've started geotagging my images as well. So you pay like $9 a month, but then you can geotag all your images for, say, for instance, you're looking for buyers in a certain area. I could geotag my images to where if they're looking for that stuff, the SEO will help hopefully potentially bring them to my website. But honestly, I just try to do so many little things in hopes that, it all guides them to that same channel of Google or to online. I just need somebody to look me up, and then I'm going to get a call from there 80% of the time. I work really well with leads as well. I don't traditionally like doing like Zillow leads or OpCity leads or stuff like that, because it feels kind of like a bait and switch sometimes for me, just because you meet a random person, they don't know if you're the selling agent or not. But with that being said, I have worked Zillow leads before. They do work. I think it just depends on your personality as a person. I feel like I have the gift of gab and I can pretty much talk to most people. So if I get somebody on the phone, or at least in front of somebody or on a Zoom call, I can pretty much 80% of the time, 90% of the time know if we're going to be a good fit and if we're going to be working together. So what's worked for me, honestly, is just kind of doing what I'm comfortable with, not doing stuff outside of my character, which would be kind of cold calling or just random cold calling. Not that I won't try it. I mean, obviously, if the business, we all try different things, and who knows, that could be something that works well for me. It's just during the lockdown, I had to kind of learn how to do everything online. So I just ramped up all my marketing, ramped up websites, tried to make all my social media handles somewhat similar, which is obviously difficult because at this point, everybody has names on Instagram and whatnot. I can't even get my name on Instagram, so I have to use a different one. No, I just honestly, what I do is I focus online. Everything at this point forward, I feel like is going to be, Google online driven, especially with, the virtual tours. And honestly, I feel like with COVID and when that happened, I feel like after those couple of years, I feel like the real estate market, or maybe how things were ran, just kind of switched. Obviously, I haven't been in the industry for too long, but it felt like the way that people communicate with clients or how you find clients is more online driven.
100%. Yes. Even NAR, the National Association of Realtors, they have a stat that it's a staggering number. It's like 96% of all home searches start online. And so that would only make sense that the search for an agent would also start in the same place.
Yeah. So if you can find, 96% start online. If you can just find a way to catch a small portion of that, then you're pretty much set. And also referral business, referral, relocation, those are really my main thing. Because as I mentioned, lockdown, when we weren't doing open houses and people had to buy houses, I was doing the virtual tours. I had a DJI Osmo stabilizer. I had my phone on there to where I could walk them through. I was doing YouTube videos. And so those little things, kind of set people up for now. And I think people are now used to looking at virtual tours and potentially writing offers on them. and they're more comfortable doing that than before. It just sounds, writing an offer on a house unseen just was unheard of. But during 21 and 22, a lot of people, or 2020, 2021, a lot of people were doing that. And I think that just overall opened a market for us to be able to reach more people online.
Essentially what we saw happen was something radical to our entire culture, and then it opened us to view things differently. And we clearly saw a huge rise in video conferencing, video chats, video tours. And so now it's normal, it's okay. And again, if that's the first way somebody's going to experience the home, we as agents should be extremely savvy with how do we then serve that up to them, the consumer, in a way that they're already comfortable and familiar with. That only makes sense. And I think, to go back a little bit into what you said, I think there's a difference, and it's very subtle, between doing things that are uncomfortable to you, but then doing things that are within your character. And I really liked that you made that distinction, because like, I work out 5 days a week and it's super uncomfortable, but it's within my character to push myself. And so when you look at these different ways to market yourself, don't avoid them because they're uncomfortable. Avoid them because they're not your character. And understanding who you are, what's your brand. Even if you're an individual, you're Chris, you have a brand. You show up a certain way, and that's within your character of who you are representing to be. And once you go outside of that, it's like standing in a coffee suit on the corner. You don't want to be identified as this other thing, right? But there's a pride. You even said, like, there was a pride in making money. You just weren't proud of that way of making money.
No, there's definitely better ways. When you're 16, dancing in coffee suits, kind of, it's all right. But
dude, you do whatever it takes, man. You need the money to buy a car. That's the goal.
I was at that point. I was also weighing the options of shoveling rock in 110 degree weather or dancing in a coffee suit. It was like, but that just kind of goes that really goes towards my work ethic and real estate. And funny enough, I won't tell you what my license plate is on my truck. I just got a new GMC with the tailgate and everything, which was amazing, because before that I had a 04 Chevy Silverado 2-wheel drive. I would get stuck in the snow showing houses.
Oh, geez.
But long story short, funny enough, when I was working in the kitchen, I was washing dishes. This was like 5 years ago. I was washing dishes. I took off my nice, ironed white shirt. I had a white undershirt on. All the kitchen staff was like, mentioned, hey, you look like 8 Mile washing dishes in the kitchen. So funny story. I was 8 Mile in the kitchen for the whole time I was there. But now I have 8 Mile on my license plate to remind me of me washing dishes. And it also is a conversation starter for clients when I'm showing them houses. They're like, why? How is there what is the 8 Mile? Are you from Detroit? And it's a funny thing for me to remind people, hey, I used to wash dishes. I used to work in the restaurant. Not everybody that you see that is a multi-million-dollar producer is that person you see on Selling Sunset or on. So I use that as it's a humbling thing for me. It keeps me humble, but it also makes me just work harder every day.
Man, I like that. I think, remembering where you came from and why you're doing what you do. Why do you get up early? Why do you work late? And, why do you take that call on Sunday? That's a differentiator that when you look at agents in their trajectory, they're the ones who just crush it year over year over year, regardless of what the economy is doing. And I don't care what the economy's doing. Everybody's going to complain about it, right? If the market is booming, it's like, oh, I can't get my buyers in a contract. And if the market slows down, they're like, oh, I can't sell my listings. But it's like the complainers will always be there and the hustlers will always be there as well. So I love that you remind yourself of your roots of like, I'm not going back there.
Funny enough, I have never told anybody that. So now everybody on the show will now know.
I love that. I don't know if you've heard of him. There's this guy, Cameron Haynes, he runs ultra marathons, which is, if people aren't familiar, they're 100-mile marathons, which is The average marathon is 26 miles. This dude runs 100. He has a quote that says, "No one cares, work harder." Like no one cares about your complaints and how you feel today and all of that. Anyways, I have literally sitting next to me, no one knows this. This is brand new, but I have sitting next to me a flag that says, "No one cares, work harder." And it's going down in my gym tonight when I go for my workout.
Those little things, crazy enough, it's nobody tells you that real estate is a mental game, and it's all about keeping your mind and keeping your mental state intact, because you are going to go through those clients dropping you. You're going to go through showing people houses and they get into, or they find another realtor, or so it's nice to have those things that keep you grounded and go, tomorrow's another day. And I always listen to Big Shawn, Bounce Back. Last night took an L, but today I'll bounce back. It's like you can lose, next day you'll come back, or you can lose 2 days in a row. As long as you're going, it's the law of averages is going to come back around. Some transactions are crazy. Some are easy comparatively, but obviously those kind of even out, and they all just kind of find a way to level each other out and make it worth it.
Couldn't have said it better myself, man. And that was actually what inspired me to create this podcast. Is I wanted the opportunity to talk to people who were just doing agents specifically, who were doing really amazing things in their market, and more so for me to stay inspired. And then through this, I'm hoping that other people will just play it in their cars, they're cruising, and then each episode after episode, they're getting these little hits of inspiration, not necessarily learning things to apply to their business that day, but just listening to people's stories and saying, it's not that bad. I will get through this. And on the other side of it is all of this just really great stuff if I just keep going.
That's the hardest thing. Like I said, my first year I had one transaction, and it was actually from a fellow server. I was doing an open house, and she gave me a call and said, "Hey, I found the house I want. And can you write the offer on it?" And her mother was a real estate agent as well, but her license expired. So I wrote the offer for them. That was my first transaction for the whole year. It was actually Russ Solomon's house, the creator of Tower Records. So it was a childhood home of Russ Solomon was my first transaction. I like to have that up there because it sounds kind of fancy.
That sounds amazing. That's super cool.
That was my first one. Second year I had 12, and then I've been consistently about 12, 13, 14. But it's a snowball effect. My mentor, or my office manager, she told me right away, she's like, "Chris, you're gonna do great, but it's gonna take a little bit. You have to be in it for 4 to 5 years, but then it'll snowball. Once you get one, that one will start rolling into two, and then it'll turn into its own force, and then you'll have your own database of people." And honestly, just being out there, and if you're a newer agent, just do open houses, talk to people. I think for me, that was the biggest thing, was doing open houses and not trying to be that person for everyone. Obviously you want to sell multi-million-dollar houses, but so does everybody else in your market, so you have to almost humble yourself, look back at where you are and go, what can I do that's different than everybody else within my brokerage or within my market? And how can I capitalize on what I'm doing differently? And especially for a newer agent, I'm 4 years in, I'm not going to be able to go up to somebody and say, "Hey, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've gone through all the ups and downs." But what I can say confidently when somebody asks me, "Why would I go for you over somebody that's been in the industry longer?" And I easily tell them, I can honestly tell you I put more time in the last 4 years than probably anybody. And you want to have market knowledge of what's happening now. Obviously, it's good to know what's going on throughout the different years, but try to find out what you can do that makes you different than everybody else in your market, and hold on to that and try to capitalize on that. And just that's pretty much what I would do if I was a newer agent. And that's a little 2 cents if that helps for anybody.
Similar to you, when I first got started, I had a mentor, Anita, who essentially, similar to what we were just talking about with character, is she's like, write a list of who you ideally want to work with, and then write a list of what you won't do and who you won't work with. And as you go out in the world and as you host open houses and as you present yourself, it's easier to then go find your communities or whatever or wherever they are, and then communicate what you're doing. It's important to understand the root of that piece.
Yeah.
So what markets do you specifically focus on? And then to kind of give more context, and then what price points, what's the average price per transaction in that market?
So I focus on, interesting enough, the area I focus on is, I call the Tri-County area. It's Sacramento, El Dorado, Placer County. The reason I have different counties in there, I know a lot of people just focus on one area, but interesting enough, you could be in Sacramento County and across the street you could be in, Placer County, and across the street from that you can be in El Dorado County. They're all within about a half an hour distance. The price point is pretty, it does vary. Interesting enough, because El Dorado County has North Lake Tahoe in it. So El Dorado County is a really large area, and if you took out the numbers for Lake Tahoe area, I would say the average price point for Placer County, Sacramento, El Dorado is probably around $550. Definitely a lot different than your market. And during that time, honestly, I've done transactions that are $50,000 mobile homes up to multi-million-dollar houses. So it really, interesting enough, I say luxury. I provide luxury at all price points, because even if it's a $50,000 mobile home, I'm going to still have the same photographer that I have do $1 million house. It's just just different. But for the most part, those are the areas I focus on. It's not too crazy. You can definitely get a 2-bed, 1-bath. You can get smaller ones for around $350 to $400. But it just depends on the area.
With your referrals or clients, do you tend to see people buying from within the market, or do you see people coming into the market from like San Francisco or LA or other places?
So definitely, I get the majority of my buyers moving in are from the Bay Area. Funny enough, I've helped a few people from Canada as well. For the most part, it's mostly Bay Area people that are relocating, or they're looking for potentially like a investment property or like an Airbnb. The majority of people that I grew up with here are, interesting enough, kind of going out more towards the mountains. So they're going up more towards like El Dorado County. And, depending on where you're working at, I know a lot of places here, like in Elk Grove, they still have buses that go out to Apple, and you can go to different places. And they try to make it pretty convenient, from my understanding, to get back up there if you are still working in the office. But that's, once we did start working from home, that's where the influx came in, because you can obviously buy 2 times the amount of house here, have your own office, have kids go to school, have a nice backyard, have a pool, pretty much for the same price point out in your area.
100%. I had a few friends actually buy beautiful homes in Sacramento during the pandemic, because, to your point, twice the amount of property, plus a pool, plus like beautiful mid-century architecture for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah.
Moving out of COVID, and we're definitely in more of a changed and challenging market. Where are you seeing your book of business trend to now? Is it still referrals? Is it open houses? Like, where are you finding leads?
Yeah. So honestly, it's mostly phone calls. It's mostly Google phone calls. I don't really do, I used to do postcards. I didn't really see too much ROI out of that. So for the most part, I sign up with this thing called Keeping Current Matters, which is pretty cool, because it gives you buyer and seller guides, new home buyer guides as well. So traditionally what I'll do is I'll have those on my website. I really, honestly, most of the stuff I do is just online. So I have all these different platforms. I have different websites as well. When I get them all running, they all go back into this one platform of home search portal for me. Mostly relocation. I like to put myself out there a lot on Facebook groups, on any other platform I can. I think the biggest step, if you want to start to become, or if you want to be seen as that referral agent in the area, is that you have to make yourself referable. So, make sure that you are being seen online. Just as you were saying, Shawn, you found me online. And if I didn't have a Google page, or if I didn't have any reviews, or if I didn't have any type of online presence, then you would say, then who is this guy? How am I supposed to know who this person is if I don't funny enough, if I don't see him online, how do I know if this is realtor or not? Yeah, mostly I just focus on my online, a lot of referrals, mostly a lot of relocation as well. Once you get that kind of ball rolling where people know that you're a good referral agent and that you take care of clients, then they're definitely more likely to work with you again. And that's honestly mostly what I focus on is just referrals and relocations. Luckily, most of my friends now are getting into the buyer pool. Prices are starting to get to their level. The last couple of years have obviously been rough. Luckily, I grew up in this area too, so my database is getting into the point now where they can afford houses. So I'll be helping a lot of them this year, but mostly focusing on referrals and relocation, because it's almost more rewarding helping somebody relocate, because you know that they have the ultimate trust in you, trying to find out where their kids potentially are going to go to school. You're trying to find out how that coordinates with their work, and it's kind of a fun aspect for me doing relocation. But yeah, I focus on that. Open houses are always great for me too. I usually get about 2 or 3 buyers out of that. So yeah, no, this year definitely focusing on just ramping up my Google profile and just getting some more reviews too.
Nice. Are you typically more buy side heavy or listing side heavy?
It's pretty even. Last year, I think it was 50-50. But prior to that, as most new agents are, I was mostly just working with buyers. So I've definitely seen the buyer sentiment change this year compared to the last 2 or 3 years, because I've been looking with a few people for years now, and now they finally feel like they have a little bit of room to stand on. They can finally push back a little bit. So it's nice right now working with buyers. The last couple of years have been rough, as you know, but the majority are buyers as of right now.
That's how I built my book of business. Is I focused almost exclusively for the first handful of years on buyers. That's why I wrote the book. And then I focused so heavy on them because I knew that on a national level, sellers will own a property for 14 years before they put it on the market. In San Francisco, the average is about 7 to 10 years. Unless it's a condo, then the average is about 3 to 4 years. And so I knew if I just sold a bunch of condos, that in a short timeline, and then I stay in relationship with them, that in a short period, it'll turn over. And that's exactly what happened with my business. Is it was like literally a light switch. 1 year, it was like, bloop, all these listings came up. But not only did I have the listings, but then I had a new buyer. And that was really when my business, it took off exponentially quicker. And that's when I started to hire and bring on people and start getting support help to kind of essentially free up my time so I can keep working at the same capacity. And I love that you're nimble enough. You're moving around with it, which I think is brilliant. And that's what gets you to survive through all of these weird and trying and challenging, extremely challenging times.
If real estate was supposed to be easy, then everybody would make money, and if, last couple of years, if you were a selling agent, listing agent primarily, it probably was really, really nice. But with any industry, any type of business, anything you're in, there's going to be market shifts. And that's where it comes on to us to make sure we're adjusting and shifting along with that market to put us in that best position to be in front of those buyers and be in front of the sellers, in front of those investors, just kind of reworking our systems to how the market is now.
I think every business, every economy, everything has a season, and 2023 has proven to be more of a winter season than when we were in the offset of COVID, when everything was selling like crazy because of the interest rates were so aggressively low. We were in a spring, but I think in a spring market, anybody can do well at anything they do, because everything they touch turns to gold. It's the winter market that proves our soul. Are you running your finances right? Are you actually running your business right? Like, do you have the correct amount of reserves? Are you being strategic with your moves? Are you actually following up with your clients and staying in front of them and providing value? Because to go back to our early part of our conversation, you could be a sleazy sales rep who calls everybody every 10 minutes being like, hey, you ready to buy or sell right now? Or you can go the more elegant route of just trying to seek first to understand what their needs and wants and desires are before you start talking about how you can help them.
Once you know those things, it makes it a lot easier through the transaction. Case in point, something comes up, maybe the seller doesn't want to, do a price reduction of $5,000, or they don't want to give you credits. That's when you can go back to that buyer or seller, knowing their motivations of, hey, I want to be closer to my family. You chime back into that, the reason you are moving here is because you want to be closer to your grandkids. I know the selling agent, isn't going to adjust this $5,000, but let's look back on what those, what we initially spoke about in the very beginning, which is that you want to be closer to your grandkids. And it's those motivations and those hopes are they kind of put the person back on track. And why are we doing this? Even though a transaction always has back and forth, but it's nice to once you have their needs and wants and their hopes, and then you're pretty much good to go. You can work around everything around that.
It's pretty simple. Like, you can't motivate somebody until you first understand what motivates them. And if we don't take the time to be a little bit of a counselor and to understand that, a lot of deals are going to fall apart. And that just goes back to focus on the relationship, actually bonding with these people, not in the sense of bonding that you're going to be hanging out with them during the holidays, but truly understand what their motivations are. Like, why are they doing these things? And then you can coach them to that point. Well, listen, man, it's been an hour. That just blew by. And I certainly absolutely appreciate your time. And I can't wait to just watch your business flourish in the next handful of years. You're on a very unique trajectory.
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate it, Shawn. And, I obviously appreciate you reaching out to me on Google. Love any connections we can make in the future. And I would love to hop on here again. I mean, at some point, I know you have probably guests already, but we can hop on again at some point if you want to just chat marketing, chat whatever. We can open those doors and have fun.
For sure. We're definitely going to do some sort of check-in to see where your business has evolved to, because you're new in the business, and I think your trajectory it's unique, and you're going to do very well.
No, I appreciate that. Appreciate that for sure.
Before we break off, what is the best way for people to find you?
If you Google Chris Hagerman Realtor, I'm going to pop up probably 10 or 15 times, and any of those links I can find. If you email me, message me, I'll write back to you within 5 minutes. I have all those, alerted to me. I also have my website, tricountyhomes.com. All my information's on there. I also have a magazine you can sign up for. It's pretty cool if you like some DIY things. But yeah, honestly, you can Google my name, Chris Hagerman Realtor, and I will pop up.
I like that 5-minute challenge. Ping him. He'll get back to you in 5 minutes.
That's a challenge. Do it.
All right, man. Thank you. That is a wrap.